So some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Tanya Brewer. I'm the current program manager of the NVD. The NVD is maintained by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, not CISA. I've heard a lot of people go, well, you're with CISA. I'm like, no, no. NIST is under the Department of Commerce. And this is my boss, Matt Scholl.
Oh, am I supposed to talk now? Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Matt Scholl, as Tanya said. I am the obligatory NIST middle-level bureaucrat to handle your questions that may or may not be applicable. I'm here both to learn, but also to discuss with you some of the potential strategic and longer-term thoughts and processes, talk about with Tanya, what we've done in the past as well. I oversee security standards, metrics, and measurements, NVD being one of them, for the U.S. and for the U.S. government, to include NVD, but a couple other things as well. So happy to be here. Thank you. How was that? Was that okay? Okay.
Okay, so really briefly, for those who aren't as familiar, this is where our data comes from. And it's the 10,000 meter view, because this slide was used in AP CERT, and I kindly put it to metric for everybody. So our main data comes from the CVE list, but we also get translations into Spanish of descriptions from INCIBE, who gives us volunteers. We also take in the KEV data, the known exploited vulnerability catalog data, every night, and add that to NVD records, and we prioritize based on KEV records. And then it goes out the door, we do some enrichment, and it goes out the door. And the two main users for what we do are scanning tool manufacturers and people who just use our data on their own. Particularly, our mission is to help serve US government agencies, but we really serve an international population. On any given month, we have hits to our data from about 160 countries worldwide. Okay, so what have we done since the last PhongCon? First couple of bullets are yours, Matt.
Okay, so Tanya was here last year with the team. We talked about looking at and developing some consortia or some more formalized ways to engage with the external communities, some of which Tanya talked about: industry, academia, some of our international partners. The mechanisms to do that, especially at NIST, is called the Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, another acronym to throw onto this heavily acronymized workshop, the CRADA. And the CRADA is a legal agreement. Legal agreements then need to be serviced by both lawyers and principal investigators, or PIs, on the NIST side. As we looked at that, we thought we might be over-engineering and making something a little heavier weight than needed to be in order to engage with that stakeholder community. So Tanya and the team came back and said, yeah, this is a great mechanism, but when we look at staff priorities, resource priorities, we have other issues in the immediacy that we need to deal with. So let's deal with those. And then as we set up into future strategic areas, we can achieve a lot of the objectives that have been discussed and that Tanya will talk about for our next kind of 2 to 5 year outlook, working on automation, working on data quality, setting ourselves up for use of submitted data rather than generating data ourselves, trying to get out of the business of data quality and data QA, these types of things that we were looking at through these consortia. We don't need the CRADAs to do that. Because of the organic authorities that NIST has and our abilities just to work openly, especially as a non-regulatory body, the CRADA really was not necessary. So we're going to continue to work on those work streams that were identified, but we're going to do it in a lower level, more informal manner than having official legally binding CRADAs or consortia CRADAs, which, like I said, while having more legal structure around it, provides for significant more overhead. So this will allow us a little more flexibility. This will allow for potentially a little more different and larger participation, and it'll allow us to hopefully enact this a little bit quicker as well, with fewer resources and overhead at the same time. You may have heard that government is looking at efficiencies for the future. You may not have, I don't know. So one of the things when we looked at is how can we do this in the most efficient and nimble manner? And so we said the CRADA is not the way. Doing this in open, deliberative, and consensus-based manners with those stakeholders, similar that we do with a standard, a specification, or a publication, a workshop, or a conference, is the way we're going to look at going forward on that. I said things have been a little disruptive, and we've been going through times of change across the board. As those have been happening, myself and leadership above me have continuously and continually reaffirmed that the NVD and the underlying specifications and data that NIST is responsible for in NVD is and will continue to be a mission priority area for NIST, both in resourcing and continuation of staffing and capabilities, both at current and at growth levels for our future. So I have assured the teams, and leadership above me at NIST has assured me and everyone that NVD is a mission priority and will continue to be a mission priority for NIST as the nation's Metrology Institute, the USNMI, as providing a measurement reference data for software and software security going forward. So I think those are my two bullets, Tanya, right? All right, those are my two bullets.
Hello, hello. Okay, now we're back on. So what else have we done? We put, after our little bit of a pause last spring, we put an entirely new enrichment team and an entirely new development team into place, got them, equipped, credentialed, and up to speed. And getting brand new teams with this kind of work up to speed can take a little bit of a minute. I mean, just imagine for those of you with dev teams, if you lost everyone on your dev team and several months later you had to start with a completely new dev team learning your code base. This is kind of where we found ourselves. So it took a minute. It was a lot of work, but we have great teams in place now, and they're not going anywhere. We also, there's a word missing from this next bullet. We also created a new mission statement. It was time. We needed a new mission statement, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so we updated and upgraded internal systems to be able to fully ingest and utilize ADP data. It actually took us 2 tries to do this because when we started, we were concerned about getting vulnerability data directly from CISA in the wake of our hiccup last year. And all of a sudden, the data was available through an ADP mechanism. And we went, we are going to need to be able to use ADP data for whatever ADPs show up in the future. So we stopped and we took a second run at it. And now we are able to take in and actually use ADP data from all ADPs, including the CVE ADP. We have a proof of concept tool that was made that should be able to, in using the CPE applicability statements that are hopefully going to be going into the CVE list, we have a tool that we think is going to lead us to automating CPE creation using those applicability statements in the near future. We overhauled our internal vuln console that our enrichment team uses. It was a significant overhaul. It got us a lot of efficiencies. It got us a lot of improvements. It increased our flow through. This changed. I got told last second. The last bullet is something that's going to happen within the next 2 to 3 months. We are overhauling our search engine so that there will be an advanced button that will open a list of things on the left side. You will be able to search by CNA and you will be able to search by ADP. Much better than what our search capability has been in the past. The APIs, especially the vuln API, had a lot of problems not long ago. I'm sure people in the room noticed. We were having a lot of 503 errors. We did an overhaul. We made a lot of changes. We now have the best performance and the best stability we've ever had with our APIs. We've had no more problems with our APIs since our latest deployment of the upgrades. The Vontology is further along the road. Later this year, we will be putting out an announcement. Please come try to use Vontology. Please come bang on it. We need feedback. We need to know, did we get it right? We need to know what's missing. We need to know how can it still be improved. We're wanting this to actually be a thing that is usable, and we are working on finishing up the UI right now. So in hopefully the summer, we'll be putting this out to the public to let you come play with it and tell us, did we miss the mark or are we okay? Okay, everybody can read. I'm going to give you a second. This is the new mission statement. We thought it was important to have one that is updated for where we are now. And I'm not going to read it to you because I hate people who read directly off of slides and don't tell you anything further. But we wanted to get something a little more updated. Is everybody good? Can I go on? Nods, okay. So how we meet this depends on who you are and what your use case is. We meet this mission in a lot of ways. If you're a tool manufacturer, how we meet this mission for you is different than if you are someone using OWASP dependency checker. We fulfill a lot of needs for a lot of different use cases. Few people look up at me and nod and give me a thumbs up when I can go on. Are we good? Okay. Okay, so unfortunately, there are some trends to be aware of, but there are some good things on this slide. If you look on the left is an access measurement that shows how many CVEs came in and how many CVEs we processed. This goes back to the beginning of 2023. This is a little over 2 years worth of data, okay? The orange lines are what we processed. As you can see, from the beginning of 2023 till recently, we are doing better than we have before. Even with an all-new team, we are doing better in the last few months where we've really hit our stride. And this is even with, we've had somebody out on paternity leave, we've had people take leave for vacation. We're still doing better, okay? However, if you look at, we had a pause for a few months where there was very little done, and it took a couple months. You can see the numbers climbing where the new team came on. But you can see the blue line is the backlog. And so between our pause for several months last year and a 32% increase in how many CVEs came into us in 2024 compared to 2023. Unfortunately, there is backlog. Okay, so what are we going to do between now and the next VolnCon? What am I going to be getting up here and talking about next year? So one of the biggest things we're going to be doing in the next couple months, we are going to begin an overhaul of the CPE specifications. We've heard it several times here. We've heard it several times last year. The CPE specifications are woefully out of date. They are not realistic for how they are being used, and they are not realistic for how they need to be used. We're going to do this with a lot of outreach to this community. There's going to be a workshop. It's going to have a virtual component so that anybody can participate from anywhere. Sorry about time zone problems. I can't do anything about those, but we can do something about if you are in Seattle and you can't make it to Gaithersburg, we get it. So we're going to have this as available as possible. And we're going to do a lot of outreach and trying to get the best amount of consensus on what should be going into these new specifications as possible. We're not going to be able to please everybody. There are people who are going to hate the CPE specifications no matter what we put out. There are people who are going to say, oh my God, you made this change, and that's the change I've been wanting for 10 years. You know, so it's going to be a little bit all over the map. But these are, you know, this is some of the most used specifications out there, and we need to make them better. We need to update them. We need to make them better. So this is a major project for us starting this year. For the time being, as soon as technically feasible, we've got to make some back-end changes. We are going to move to gap filling temporarily to help speed through the backlog. What this means is if we have things in our backlog that the CNA has a CVSS score or the CNA has a CWE score, value, we are going to not create our own, and we are going to go ahead and gap fill whatever is missing and let them go through the system. Now, this is a temporary thing, but we hope this gets us through the backlog even faster. We're going to be overhauling our internal CPE console, similar to we did our internal Vuln console. This is going to get us even faster, even more efficiency for the enrichment team. And when we do this, it is going to give us something that is going to allow us, hopefully later this year, to put out an externally facing CPE console. The goal is to work with organizations so that using the external console, the goal is that they would be able to manage their own CPEs in the CPE dictionary in the future. Okay? Can't tell you a timeline on that part of it, but that is the eventual goal. We are also going to update and refresh our web content. So that will be coming later this year. We are working on a proof of concept tool that will hopefully be the beginning of automating enrichment for Linux kernel CVEs. We think we're going to have a lot of success with this. We also have a team within NIST that's going to lead the charge on looking at what AI and machine learning can do to improve our enrichment process and make it faster and you know, just easier to get through. All right. Here's the fun part. Questions.
All right, folks in the room, please get queued up. We have several questions on Discord as well. So we'll try to alternate between IRL and Discord to get everyone addressed in our time. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, so I'll try to be very brief and terse, but basically, why is NVD not an ADP? why do we have two sources for data that we have to go get all the vulnerability data, and then we have to wait for NVD to pick up new ADPs and vice versa? And why are there two?
Well, it's a good question. We've talked about this internally a lot. I mean, the real answer right now is just history. This is how the system was initially established going back. And we've talked both with DHS and CISA and internally about how do we make one data source or data set going forward. There are some strategic and operational and governance and business issues that we need to harmonize on. So it's less about the data issue and more around operations and business issues that each of these databases serve to ensure that we are covering both of those sets of stakeholders going forward, meeting the requirements that both of these data sets are intended to cover. So we agree it is a pain to have two different data sets with an overlapping, schemas and overlapping data. And we've kind of looked at and outlined some of what are the initial issues that need to be discussed, overcome. I mean, even things like governance as going forward as well. So yeah, we know we're not really servicing the end user well through this. We would like to overcome some of these issues going forward. It's one of the things we're going to be looking at in the future, but it's not as easy as just flipping a switch in data integration. I think there's business layer issues that we need to address. So
Yeah.
long answer for we would love to do it, and there's things we need to overcome in order to get there.
All right.
Right.
And just to add to that, like, it seems a little weird that we have two government-funded agencies creating web search features for the same data. So it's just a little strange. So
Ken, if I may, Pete Eller from member of the CVE board. They're not an ADP, and we've talked about them becoming an ADP. As a board member, I strongly recommend against it. And the reason I do is because the data set is not current. And it needs to be more open. So that's a discussion point that for us to accept it as an ADP, we need to look at. And then when we look at the data, I would expect that we actually understand that the CNA is the authoritative source. And I get NVD enriching data, but we have to come to some degree about where that source of data is from and how that is portrayed and aggregated. So I'm just stating what my position is, and what I'm looking for is some real good assurance about that becoming more open and interactive, and we stop confusing those who consume software.
Concur. Those are some of those governance issues that we need to discuss and figure out. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we do have a question from an attendee on Discord. This is from Kent Landfield. The question is, does NIST reevaluate records that have CISA vulnerability data included?
Not currently.
And hi, Kent. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, we are using CISA ADP data and gap filling based on that. And you're going to see results of that starting towards the end of April going into May. We work on 1-month sprints for our enrichment efforts. And so, we've started powering through the CISA ADP data, and you should start to see upticks in numbers going a little faster because of that towards the end of April going into May.
G'day, I'm Andrew. Up until last week, I was with Google's open source security team. We have had a more recent relationship with the NVD. It's been lovely to be able to have that. I had gotten Google's internally hot to trot with the consortium because one of the expectations that was set at last year's VolCon was that was going to be a thing, right? And then eventually we learned that no, it's not going to be a thing, right? And my question is, how can industry provide input to the benefit of the NVD into best practices around operations and processes and whatnot? Like, we were hoping to be able to do that via the consortium in ways that would be beneficial, both in terms of efficiencies and outcomes. It sounds like the consortium is no longer going to be a thing. So
Yeah.
will there be formal ways to be able to provide that?
There'll be both formal and, I'm not going to say informal, but formal and less formal. So Tanya had talked about the upcoming conference and workshop, which will have a pre-call, then the conference, which will be open to have these types of discussions as a more formal mechanism. You can also, and many do, individually reach out, and we can set up discussions and meetings both as individuals, as your own industry consortia, and then also through those workshops. Those discussions, though, that we will be having, just so you're aware about those discussions, we pretty much have them in a very, what we try to be open and we use the word transparent mechanism. So if you come to us and talk to us one-on-one, which we encourage and many people do, those discussions we will also, as needed, reflect out, this is what we've heard, this is what we've heard from, so that we can show changes that we've made and the source requirements that we have generated for those changes. So formally, it'll be through call for participation in the conferences and workshops, at the conferences and workshops, and then as we close those out through closing reports. Less formally, absolutely, we can do one-on-one discussions and engagements, but with the caveat that those discussions will also potentially be reflected out in public as well.
So we'll have the last question right here. Everybody that's been in Discord, we're going to get all that information piped over to Chris and the NVD team, so they'll get addressed, and we'll put it back into Discord in the near future. Go ahead, last question, sir.
So from with Oracle, we plan to put CP into CP record. So our question here is, will NVD adopt our CPs, or will they make any modification on our submissions?
We take Oracle CPE submissions.
So we are planning on using CPE inputs through the external CPE console that we're going to be putting together later this year. And it will be one-on-one with organizations to, we have to set up two-factor authentication for those people feeding into the console and these kinds of things. But we will be opening it up to basically CNAs. So Oracle could be one of those. It's not limited to any particular company.
Before the console is ready, we submit the record in April, in the CVE record. So we will NVD create another CP string and put into the NVD page instead of using our submission in the CVE record.
This is a little more technical than I'm prepared to answer right now because it's going to take a longer answer. Chris Turner over there raised his hand. He's going to be the person you want to talk to.
Okay, so here's a high-level question. So we're using the CVE JSON schema for CE record, and NVD has own schema. Can these two schemas be merged? Because we have to pass two different kind of record through two parsers?
We will be looking at that.
Okay.
So Tanya and Matt, thank you for coming and giving us an update. We will get the questions in Discord addressed. So please, if you have more, type them into Discord. We'll get them over to Chris. So let's give Tanya and Matt a round of applause. Thank you for coming.